Clap, 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 clap your hands. How low can you go? Can you go down low? How low can you go? Can you take it to the floor? Clap, 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 clap your hands. Clap, 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 clap your hands. Slide to the left. Slide to the right. Reverse. Reverse. Crisscross. Crisscross. Hands on your knees. Hands on your knees. Everybody clap your hands.
Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
All right. Happy Friday. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sundays. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And what's up, guys? It's Friday. We're heading into the weekend. I figure I try to go out with a banger show. We're going to reveal a little bit more corruption tonight. At least I see this as corruption. So we're going to dive into a little bit of that. But welcome back, guys. Welcome back. Really quick announcement before I forget. Last night at the end of my stream, I said that James M. Walton, it was actually someone who was an oil person. That is a James M. Walton, but it turns out I was actually right the very first time when I said that he was one of the heirs of the Waltons. James M. Walton is James Carr Walton's son. So he is a Walton in the Walmart business. So they're still all connected. He is an heir. And so, yes, that was correct the first time in reference to Bernie Sanders. And as I've checked today, Bernie Sanders still has not issued a response in reference to that article that has been released. So it's really funny. People are some people are mad at me because I put the clip up on Twitter, and some people are like, how dare you speak badly about Bernie Sanders? And I'm like, is Bernie your god? Like, it's really weird, the way that people just idolize a politician. They're all corrupt. And you have to call it out. Even someone like Bernie Sanders, who you may have supported, you may have canvassed for, etc., they're all corrupt. That's just how I see it. Let's go ahead and give shout outs to people in the chat, and then we'll get into tonight's stories. Greetings, Nick says, close to 50K subscribers. I am close. I'm trying not to pay attention to it. I really am. I feel like if I pay attention to it, then it just kind of creeps by. But I am close there. It's pretty interesting. Shout out to Will O. While it was for a relatively short time that I even considered them a net positive, I massively regret it. Also, congrats on being so close to 50K, Sabby. Here's hoping for 100K soon. Thank you so much, Willow. I did submit a new poll because it was brought to my attention in the chat that apparently I left out the option did not support them. So I started a new poll. Go ahead and take that poll and let me know what you think. That's in relation to one of the stories I'm discussing tonight. What's going on, Raul says, sup. Shout out Dr. Nick says, but I never supported them. Yes, it was you, Dr. Nick. Let me know. Shout out to Mastermind says, I can regret something I never did. I hear you guys. Shout out to Hannah says, yes, I regret supporting them. Greetings Astro says, can't regret what I didn't do. What's up, Lorez says, yo, Sabrina, Eric, and Sabby fam, smash the like. Yes, I regret supporting them, Bernie, Fraud Squad, all. Great show earlier, Sab, on the episode of Chicago PD. Fact Rec failed on Black people because it was made to wreck white people. Thank you so much for that. Shout out to Rodrigo says, I don't like Rich Kyle. He's completely out of touch with regular people. Sounds like a regular Democrat now. We'll wait till you see the story we got tonight. Wait till you see the story we got tonight. Greetings, Pizza the Hut. Kyle drink the baby blood. It's too late for him. Shout out to Jay Vintage. Hit up on Sab's new redone poll, comrade. Yes, please do. Shout out to Rick says, hey, y'all. Greetings, Bryce says, sup, Sabby and everyone. Yes, I regret supporting them. At the time, they seemed to be the most left on positions about a lot. I've learned my lesson and learned plenty from RBN and chat to move on. I hear you. Shout out to Venti Cafe says, Sabby fire, solidarity. Happy Friday, everyone. Greetings, Jay says, hey, Sabby, I'm here at JD's live show and wanted to say a quick hello. Have a great stream. Thank you. Welcome, Jay. Oh, yeah, Pasta is hosting Jimmy's show this week. I guess you guys realized that when you when you went over there. But yeah, I think he's hosting for the whole week, I think. Greetings, Randy says, hey there, all my Sabby comrades. Shout out to Corey says, Sabby Friday, let's go. Greetings, Joe says, love y'all. Shout out to Peace Dove giving claps. Greetings, Desert Mantis says Justice Dems are a scam. Shout out to Simply C says, hi all, or hey all. Greetings, Ben, who's a Sabby member, says doobie doobie doo. Greetings, Lana says, hello, Sabby. Hello, Lana. Shout out to Gamer says, hello. Shout out to Roger says, thanks, Sab, for covering Wolf earlier. That vid was brought to me by Marco, and that was us on there with Nick. Don't worry, won't hold it against you for getting to read the jewels I dropped on Rock. I forgot. A lot of times I forget Rockfin when I'm on RBN because I don't have a producer, and Eric cues up Rockfin in the background for me. So it's a lot of times I forget. Shout out to Eric, who's a Sabby member, says, here we go, Friday peeps. Greetings, Red Six says, hi, Sabby. And let's give a shout out to John, says, happy Friday, y'all. Hit the like. Hit that like button, guys. If you haven't had a chance to do so, that helps me with the like button. I mean, with the algorithm, the like button. It's Friday, okay? It's Friday. It's been a long ass week. All right, let's go ahead and give a quick shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. And then we'll go ahead and dive in because we got some things to talk about. Let's give them something to talk about. All right. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters. There's also Sabbies in the house. And of course, members. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And I want to give a special shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's go ahead and give it up for Lana. Lovely Lana. All right. I don't think there's a song about Lana. I'm thinking about Layla. Layla. Got you on my knees, Layla. That's what I'm thinking about. That song. Sorry, that's my jam. Anywho, let's go ahead and dive into that thumbnail so you can see what we're discussing tonight. Pretty interesting stories here, I think. Layla. Got you on my knees, Layla. Hope you guys like some of Eric Clapton stuff. Some of his views have been kind of cringe recently, but is what it is. All right, tonight we are discussing Jimmy Dore versus Marianne Williamson. Ouch. I do not think that interview went well for Marianne. Oh, man. We'll get into that. We're also going to discuss Kyle Kulinski admits it. What is he admitting and what does this have to do with AOC? We're going to get into this discussion about Justice Democrats, where Kyle thinks they're going, where they messed up. And we're going to go back and take a look at the very beginning of Justice Democrats. And I have some things to show you, some things that were sent my way that I think we need to talk about. We're also going to discuss facial technology goes wrong. True story. I don't know if a lot of people heard about what happened to this woman in Detroit, but we're going to get into that tonight. And we're also going to discuss Utah ballot measure wins. If I have time, I may be able to jump into Vermont tonight as well, but it all depends on how long I talk, man. How long I talk. Silly mood tonight. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into the first story. I am not one of those people who approves of facial recognition software. Let's go ahead and just get that out there. Because I do feel like technology is not perfect and mistakes can be made. And recently, there was a mistake that was made. A pregnant woman in Detroit had a run-in with facial technology that did not go well for her. And this is a warning sign to those of you in reference to facial recognition software, how in some ways it could work for you, but in other ways, remember, it is technology and it can make mistakes. Let's go ahead and dive into this story here. I want you to see this clip on News Nation. The woman who actually had to deal with this is also on this clip as well. So you're going to get the opportunity to hear directly from her. Let's dive right in.
If you're one who is already wary of facial recognition, listen up to this story. A Michigan woman shining light on the dangers of facial recognition after she says that very technology landed her under arrest for a crime she didn't commit. Portia Woodruff says she was wrongfully booked for robbery and carjacking because of a false facial recognition match, all while she...
This is exactly what I was afraid of. Facial recognition software making a mistake and identifying someone's face in reference to a crime, and that person actually is not the perpetrator. This is exactly what I was afraid of in reference to facial recognition software. And here we are. Let's go back just a little bit because I cut her off some. There we go.
Because of a false facial recognition match, all while she was, get this, 8 months pregnant. Now she's suing the city of Detroit and the detective spearheading this case. Portia Woodruff and her attorney, Ivan Land, are here with us live. Portia, just to start out, I'm so sorry this happened to you, especially while 8 months pregnant, which is already trying enough in and of itself. Can you take us back to that day that you were arrested and what happened to you?
Yes, it started that morning. I was getting my children ready for school. I heard a loud knock at my door. I went down, I opened the door. It was a female officer at the door, and she asked me if my name was Portia Woodruff. I confirmed. Then she proceeds to say that she had a warrant for my arrest. And originally, I thought it was a joke because I'm trying to figure out like a warrant for my arrest for what? Mm-hmm. Which I did ask the officer. I asked a warrant for my arrest. I was confused. So I said, a warrant for my arrest for what? So initially she didn't, give me an answer at first. She kind of hesitated and paused. She wouldn't answer me. She said, well, step outside and I can explain it to you. Then I said, well, no, I won't step outside until you tell me what I have a warrant for my arrest for. So then another officer came up. He said, well, we have a warrant for your arrest for carjacking. And I was, again, I was stunned, paused, I stepped back. I'm like, well, I'm 8 months pregnant and my vehicle is sitting right here in the driveway. Carjacking.
Could you guys imagine? This is the other thing. She was pregnant, like 8 months pregnant. Some women can go into labor during that time, right? Some women don't make it all the way to the 9 months. But could you imagine being 8 months pregnant and you're being accused of a crime based on facial recognition software? You had nothing to do with this. You were not involved.
Who? So, as I'm still trying to convince the police officers, like, no, you have the wrong person. No, this can't be right. My children were standing there, they started crying because they're like, oh my God, the police are here to take my mom to jail.
Yeah, it's traumatic for them to
see.
It was
very traumatic. They didn't understand what was going on. So initially I told my daughter, my oldest daughter, to go upstairs and wake up my fiance to get him downstairs. Like, I don't know what's going on, get him downstairs. I need him to talk to them and see what's going on. So she ran upstairs, he came downstairs, and in the midst of him coming downstairs, I also called my mom on the phone to put her on speakerphone. We're basically all kind of pleading with the police officers to check check the records, check the paperwork. Does it say anywhere in there that the woman was pregnant or anything like that? Because we're trying to understand what was going on at the time. No one hear or listen to what we were trying to say when we were basically telling them, no, you have the wrong person.
And did you get booked? Did you spend time behind bars for this, or an overnight there?
They took me to jail. I stayed there for 11 hours.
Wow. Wow.
I really think she could sue. Now, you have to be careful, because when you sue the police department and you're still living in the same town, that doesn't tend to go so well for people. Just FYI. You guys remember that documentary, Making a Murderer? Do you guys remember that? There was a part 1 and a part 2, Making a Murderer and stuff like that. Like, remember the guy stayed in the town and the police were just kind of like just finding ways to still mess with him, whether you believe whether he did it or not. It was just like, if you go after that department and you remain in that town, they're going to continue to come after you, whether you were guilty or not, whether they were wrong or not.
Let me bring you in on this, too. Police say they used surveillance video and facial recognition software to link Portia to the crime, and that the warrant that led to her arrest was on solid ground. But the lawsuit, as she just mentioned, never mentions that the suspect was pregnant. What, in your opinion, did police get so wrong here?
Well, it was lazy, sloppy police work. They ran her through a facial recognition. It was a hit, showed it to the victim, who was drunk that night. So his memory might not have been reliable. Once they received the hit, he identified her. They should went to her house, interviewed her. They wouldn't have to ask her one word. They would have saw that she was pregnant and walked off her porch.
Yeah, yeah.
So my question is, if the victim was drunk at that time, shouldn't they have probably waited until that person sobered up before they identified who they thought the perpetrator was? Just a question. Like, I'm not trying to be, that person. But I'm just saying, like, if they were apparently intoxicated, it probably would have been smarter for them to wait until that person was sober before they identified who they believed the perpetrator was.
Yeah. End of story.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's it. End of story. Yeah.
And Portia, I'll give you the last word here. Have you gotten any sort of apology from the city, from local law enforcement there? And in what ways do you find that you and your family are still suffering?
As of yesterday, the chief of police did.
Okay.
Issue an apology to myself and my family as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, gosh. And are you still suffering? And if so, in what way?
Well, I was pregnant, so that put more stress on me. I'm dealing with the postpartum. My daughters, they did go into the when he apologized, they were there. So they're still in a healing process, but they were there to understand that he did apologize on behalf of the officers. So we're still healing and dealing with it, because we are still afraid. If an officer gets behind me, gets on the side of me, honestly, my stomach is in a knot every time. My kids.
This could have gone so many different ways as well. She was lucky that the officer who did show up decided not to be violent in any way, shape, or form. But imagine if she would have ended up with someone like Derek Chauvin. You know what I mean? And she wasn't even in the wrong. She wasn't the criminal. She didn't do anything wrong. So we're going to get into some of the issues with facial recognition software with the next clip from Second Thought, because I think more people need to talk about this, because this could have happened to you. It could be you next time. The police knock on your door and say that you were actually chosen out of a lineup, your picture, based on the facial recognition software. It could happen to any one of us, not just her.
They get scared. They get nervous. They don't know, hey, are they going to pull you over and take you to jail? Because it's like, okay, you didn't do anything and they took you before.
Yeah,
Yep.
so what's going to keep this from happening to mom again?
Thank you for watching. Go to News Nation.
Okay. Before I go into this clip from Second Thought, there's something I just want to point out that I think people need to pay attention to. If the perpetrator points to a picture that they believe, or excuse me, the victim points to a picture that they believe is the perpetrator, but the picture was selected based on facial recognition software, the software itself is still a problem because the software can select someone's face who may happen to look like the perpetrator, but may not be the perpetrator. And the victim, of course, doesn't know that. So they see the picture in the line and be like, oh, yeah, that was the person. So some people saw this story and some people said, well, it's the victim's fault for not realizing they selected the wrong person. Okay. But the software chose the face. And I'm going to say something here. We don't all look alike. Okay? We don't all look alike. If the software didn't pick the face in the first place, this may have never happened to her. And these are some of the problems that you're going to run into with facial recognition software. What about people who are identical twins or triplets? What about those people? Have you ever seen a set of identical twins that look so identical you can't tell them apart? There were twin sisters in my high school. They were both on the basketball team and they looked exactly alike. I could not tell them apart. So what do you do in those situations? Second Thought is really good at breaking these types of things down. If you don't follow Second Thought, I think you should. He talks a lot about like capitalism as well. But he talks about in this video why facial recognition technology is so dangerous. And I want to hit on a couple of these points.
Out at lunch somewhere, just enjoying your 30 minutes of peace before you have to go back to work. Some guy thinks you're attractive, snaps a picture of you, and with a facial recognition app is able to find your Facebook, Instagram, or other social media pages. He comes over and says, "No way, we went to the same school, and I work just down the road from you." You have no idea who this person is, and yet he has all of this information about you. Information you did not give him. You would likely see this as a huge invasion of privacy, and rightly so. If a picture of your face can function as a key to all your information, would you feel safe in public? Would you feel safe knowing that someone could just take a quick picture of you on the train, or in traffic, or at a protest, and find not only your name, but any other pictures of you anywhere online? Your link.
That's another piece about facial recognition technology that's also not mentioned, how people can just take a picture of you and find out other information about you.
LinkedIn profile picture would give them where you work. Photos you're tagged in on Facebook would give them the identities of your friends and family. The idea that your own face could be the ticket to an instant doxing should be alarming. Should we be able to expect a reasonable level of privacy in our everyday lives? It seems like a simple question, but it's been at the heart of a very intense debate for years. Many people say we should be able to keep some personal information private from the rest of the world, to be shared with people of our choice. Others say that we forfeit the right to privacy when we operate in the public sphere. There have been court cases that come down on both sides of the issue, and we don't seem to be getting much closer to a resolution. So technically, as of right now, there's no clear answer to whether or not we can expect a degree of privacy in public. Privacy and security. These two notions, each lauded by different groups as the more essential right, have increasingly been in conflict with one another. In recent years, as camera technology and artificial intelligence have become more advanced and widely available, we've seen the genesis of new, highly invasive and widespread surveillance operations. Countries around the world have adopted high-tech surveillance methods to spy on adversaries and their own citizens, usually under the pretense of national defense. More cameras means more safety and better preparedness, or so we're told. And don't think that world governments are the only entities conducting surveillance operations. Another serious threat comes from the private sector. Giant companies like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and IBM have been developing facial recognition technology for years, and often sell their identification services to law enforcement agencies. But how exactly does facial recognition work, and why do we need to be worried about it? As computers and artificial intelligence have matured, we've seen the advent of machine learning. That is, programs that can be trained to do certain things and become better at them over time. We've seen them learn to play complicated games at the very highest levels, learn to walk, run, and jump. And recently, we've seen machine learning algorithms become scarily good at identifying faces, with certain caveats, which we'll get to later. Here's how it works. After collecting millions of pictures from the internet, from Facebook, photography hosting websites, and news articles, software engineers began feeding these learning algorithms photos, which are then analyzed using over 100 different parameters, which, of course, no one fully understands except the algorithm. Then the engineers play a little game with the machine. Basically 2 truths and a lie, but for facial recognition software. The algorithm is given what's called an anchor photo, a different photo of the same person, and a photo of somebody else. Then the algorithm has to decide what parameters to use to minimize the statistical difference between these 2 photos and maximize the difference between the like photos and the imposter.
Let's pause right here. This is one of the problems. Because this is where the algorithm can really mess up and be like, oh, wait a minute, is this person? Oh no, it's that person. When these could actually be, let me go back for just a second. Right here. These could actually be this picture and the first picture and the second picture. These could actually be 2 different people. See, that's the thing. Does facial recognition technology, does it adjust for changes in reference to age, your hairstyle? What about your complexion? Some people like to tan. These are some of the things that can happen along the way throughout your life that facial recognition technology may not get right. We change as we get older. It's another thing to think about.
Of somebody else. Then the algorithm has to decide what parameters to use to minimize the statistical difference between these 2 photos and maximize the difference between the like photos and the imposter. This process is repeated millions of times to expand the algorithm's capabilities, and eventually it gets packaged and sold as functional facial recognition software to eager buyers, often police departments or government organizations. But what if the group who designed the software didn't have a photo of you? That means the program wouldn't be able to identify you, right? In theory, yes, but here's a quick test. Do you have a passport? What about a driver's license? School ID? The data that state and federal governments have on file is frequently used without our knowledge to build these algorithms. And even if by some weird fluke your data hasn't yet been misused, as soon as the government buys the new software, they'll just feed it their entire archive of information, which will include your data. This data is repackaged and sold all the time. Retail stores can get information on known shoplifters. They can use their existing cameras to record foot traffic, then use the software to identify repeat customers or other persons of interest. Odds are you're already in somebody's database. But of course, this is all very hypothetical. Let's take a look at some more concrete examples.
Let's pause here for just a second because I want to remind you of something in reference to going off the grid. This is why some people nowadays have decided to go off the grid. Now, what does that mean? Going off the grid means they're not on social media. They're not connected to technology in any way, shape, or form. Some of them may not even have, like, I've seen some people go off the grid before where they're just like, they leave their phones, everything out of the way. Just, they do not want to be found. They make it so that it's almost impossible to find them. They go live out in the woods remotely somewhere and they're just completely off the grid. A lot of times they won't have an address, a physical address that you can actually, look up and find them. This is why some people are starting to do things like this. Because the government and social media and technology just all together, they have become more invasive in our lives. Our right to privacy doesn't really seem to exist anymore. And that's why some people will just do that. They'll just go off the grid and say, I don't want to be found by anybody. I know where you guys live. If I need to find you, I'll find you. But I'm getting completely out of the government's eyesight. And I don't want my data to be used. In reference to the IDs, if you have a driver's license, if you have a passport, they already got you. But this is why some people will just do this and just be like, this is too much. Now let's go on.
According to a report released in 2016, U.S. law enforcement agencies maintain a database of over 117 million American adults. That means, as of 2016, there's a 50-50 shot of your information being logged in a police or FBI facial recognition database. To make things worse, the use of this data is completely unregulated. So, if Officer Friendly thinks you're cute, he can just use the database to find out where you live and come ask you on a date. Hard to say no to a guy with a gun who's apparently fine with misusing the tools available to him. If this scenario sounds far-fetched, you haven't been paying attention. In the wake of the George Floyd protests, police have been using facial recognition software to identify people in photos posted online. They've taken that information and shown up to arrest organizers and other participants. This isn't the first time the police have misused facial recognition software either. The same thing.
That's why sometimes, even now, that's why sometimes you'll see protesters will have their face covered, not just because they don't want their employer to find out. That's one of the reasons. But the other one is they don't want to be identified by the police or by the government.
Happened with the Freddie Gray marches. Protesters were targeted, cops showed up at their homes and arrested them for nothing more than exercising their right to assemble. If you'd like to see what this kind of surveillance and facial recognition looks like on a large scale, look no further than China.
出现每一张脸都可以对应说他的身份证，以及他所经过，比方说在过去1周，我们回溯他的行经路程，我们也做了像人和车的匹配。那同时在人上匹配还包括亲属关系匹配，然后是你经常接触人员之间匹配。就是当摄像机布到或者我们传感器布到一定密度的时候，其实我们会经常知道你跟谁之间。
So they can even tell who you meet with frequently. This is scary, right? So they're not just watching you. They're watching your family. They're watching your friends. This kind of reminds me of someone mentioned it earlier. Atrice mentioned it. Sounds like Minority Report. Yep. Yeah.
Who you are, where you've been, whom you meet. If you think this sounds completely dystopian, you're not alone. That level of surveillance is terrifying. What happens when you go to a political meeting that the government doesn't like? Crackdowns are a very real concern in places like China that rely heavily on facial recognition technology. To make things even more absurd, there's a Chinese surveillance company called Skynet. You know, like the evil surveillance corporation from Terminator. But China isn't the only country with questionably named surveillance operations. The United States has Palantir. Like the evil crystal ball Saruman uses to see things from his tower in Lord of the Rings. Palantir is perhaps the closest thing we have to a real-life pre-crime unit. They don't have an office, they have a sensitive compartmentalized information facility, or SCIF, in a back alley in Palo Alto. The building is resistant against all attempts to access the data within. Their security includes biometric systems, walls impenetrable to radio waves, phone signal, or internet. Its data is blockchained, as are the identities of those who hold the dozens of required passcodes.
All the people who warned that something like this was coming, they don't sound so crazy now, do they? They don't sound so loony anymore, that they warned that this was coming, that they wanted to watch you.
Palantir is a big data giant, willing to use data in ways that no other group will. They watch what you do and use that data to try to predict what you'll do next. Its clients include the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, the branches of the US military, and the IRS.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible.
They are a behemoth in the data world, but almost no one knows they exist. Why? Because that would probably be bad for business. Palantir tracks all sorts of targets: suspected terrorists, financial fraudsters, sex traffickers, and, most ominously, a group they simply refer to as subversives. The LAPD has used Palantir to predict when and where someone will commit a crime, and then swoop in and stop that crime from happening, not unlike Tom Cruise in the Minority Report. You know, before the pre-crime operation frames him for murder and tries to kill him. Defenders of facial recognition technology will say, look, there's nothing to worry about if you're a law-abiding citizen. That's a weird position to take, because even if the technology were 100% accurate, which it's not, you're assuming that the government and law enforcement will act in accordance with your best interest. If you're a gun owner, what happens when there's a crackdown on guns and suddenly you have cops showing up at your door to sweep your house?
This piece right here is so critical. This is very important for people to understand. You cannot assume that the government is going to behave in your best interests. Most of the time, we've seen this. Most of the time, they're not. They're going to behave in their best interests. And we have to think about all the changes that you will go through physically in your lifetime. And the odds of facial recognition technology getting that right every time. What if you had plastic surgery? What if you were one of those people who had been injured in a fire and you had reconstructive, like skin grafts or plastic surgery? I've seen this happen with people on their face. What if you had plastic surgery on your face? Would facial recognition be able to match if he was still alive? If Michael Jackson was still alive, would they be able to match Michael Jackson's face accurately, considering the way his face changed over time? I know some of you may laugh, but this is a serious question. There are people who change. So that's something else to think about too.
If you're a political activist, what happens when your meetings get criminalized? The law can and always has been used to justify horrific treatment of citizens by the government. But let's talk about the efficacy of this technology, because in the grand scheme of things, software that isn't accurate might be just as dangerous as software that is. In a recent test of the accuracy of real-time facial recognition, an independent study found that the software was only correct in 8 out of 42 cases. That's pretty bad. To make things worse, it appears that many facial recognition algorithms have a racial or gender bias. Partly because the software is often trained with white faces, the error rate when identifying people with darker skin is drastically higher than those with light skin.
Bingo! So this is more likely to go incredibly wrong for people of darker skin. As with the woman that you just saw in Detroit that was arrested for carjacking someone, and she was not the perpetrator. I mean, it's just, there's just so many things that can go wrong with this. Simply said, what about Little Kim being so light now? Little Kim's face looks completely different than how it did 15 years ago. She's completely reconstructed her face. So again, it's just like, what about these changes?
As one MIT researcher found, across 3 recognition programs, the inaccuracy rate for identifying white men was never more than 0.8%. For darker-skinned women, on the other hand, the error rate was over 20% for one of the algorithms and over 34% in the other 2.
Now think about the woman in Detroit that was just arrested. This is terrible.
No, the algorithms aren't racist. They're just dumb pieces of software performing the task they were programmed to do. But the people who programmed them probably had some racial blind spots. For example, one group claimed their software had an accuracy rating of over 97%, but the dataset used to assess its performance was over 77% male and 83% white.
Okay, there you go. I mean, it's wow. Oh my God.
Then there's the infamous case of the University of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Their team developed a facial recognition software that they claimed could predict whether a person was a criminal just by looking at a picture of their face. After putting out a press release bragging about their new software, the team received a huge wave of backlash, which is a very good thing, because what they had invented was just a debunked pseudoscience known as phrenology. Phrenology was the study of the size and shape of the human head to determine criminality or other such undesirable characteristics. Unsurprisingly, it has a long and obscenely racist history. Some of these facial recognition technologies are just phrenology repackaged for a 21st century audience. The dangerous part is when this software is sold to police departments or government organizations.
Yep.
What happens when an inaccurate software determines you have a criminal face? That could lead to a confrontation with the police when you've done absolutely nothing wrong.
And you may not keep your life after that confrontation. This is incredibly concerning. It's just, I hope more people talk about the story. You can watch the rest of this interview on Second Thoughts channel, not interview, excuse me, this video on Second Thoughts channel. It's called Why Facial Recognition Technology is So Dangerous. That's Second Thought. Check that out. He has some really good stuff over there. But I hope more people talk about this story in reference to what happened to this woman in Detroit, because next time it could be you. Just something to think about. New Sheep says, I always feel like somebody is watching me. Yeah, it's this is scary stuff. I just what will they think of next? All right. Okay. We're going to go into our next story. This involves Kyle Kulinski and Justice Democrats. There's one video. I want to start with the video in reference to Kyle reacting to the demise of Justice Democrats. That's how we're going to start off this conversation. And then we're going to backtrack a little bit, and we're going to go back to the very beginning of when Justice Democrats was created. There are some things that was actually sent my way recently that I was not aware of. And I think this may explain why things did not work out the way that they should have, right? So this is not a go after bash, Kyle kind of thing. There's certain things I want to point out, and I think it may explain why the squad is behaving the way that they are, why Bernie Sanders wiring money, campaign funds to his nonprofit, like all this stuff that has been happening over the past, I would say like actually the past 2 years, where we're like, they were fighting and pushing back when Trump was in office, but when Biden won, they just kind of, caved. I think we're going to have an explanation to that now. So I want to begin with this video from Kyle where he talks about the demise of Justice Democrats. And right off the bat, from the beginning of the video, there's something that he said that really made me realize what Justice Democrats was really supposed to do and why it was really created. Now, we were told that Justice Democrats was formed to basically take on the establishment Democrats in the party and to create more of a reformist Democratic Party, so to speak. But is that really the case? Let's dive into this video here because I want to show you something. There's something he said here that made me realize I don't think that was actually, that may have been his intention, but I don't think that's actually what it was really about. Listen to this.
So a big story dropped last week about Justice Democrats that I wanted to share with you and give you guys my take on it. So Huffington Post has this long article by Daniel Marins, who, by the way, does a phenomenal job with his reporting. I feel like this was very detailed. And the title here is, "A Progressive Powerhouse's Surprise Layoffs Fuel Concerns About the Left's Future. Justice Democrats played a critical role in electing the squad. Now it will have to do more with less." Okay. So they actually bring me up in this piece and, some of my criticisms against Justice Democrats. And like I said, very long article, very detailed. Do yourself a favor and go read the entire thing. But I'll sum it up for you here and then I'll give you guys my take on it. So basically, what they say is this: Justice Democrats, and you guys know the backstory. I'll give you a quick backstory just so, you remember all the details here. But in the wake of the 2016 election, Hillary Clinton, of course, lost to Donald Trump. And I was just disgusted and furious that a guy like Donald Trump could get anywhere near the White House. And I viewed
Hold on to that piece.
that as a colossal failing of the Democratic Party to not be able to beat the most beatable opponent in history because you're just coming across as that disconnected from average people. And so, I got together with Cenk Uygur and Shoykat Chakrabarti and Corbin Trent and some others, and we decided we need to change the course of the Democratic Party and try to make it so we get representatives who stand for something, who will fight for the American people, and make it so that the Republicans are an afterthought and they lose all the time because we are representing the people so well.
Okay. So that piece right there, when he said that how he was disappointed by Trump winning, and I know a lot of us were, and then he said, all right, he got together with those people. There's some other people that were there that are not mentioned that I feel for whatever reason are just never mentioned. We're going to get into that tonight. And I'll tell you about why I think they're not mentioned. But they decided to start what ends up becoming Justice Democrats. Based on his statement right there, that tells me that he started Justice Democrats as kind of like a response to Donald Trump to prevent anyone like Donald Trump or someone with that type of rhetoric from getting into the White House again. The way that Justice Democrats was sold was to reform the Democratic Party. But if you notice what Kyle just said there, he didn't say that he started Justice Democrats as a response to Barack Obama's presidency. That would be the Democratic Party, right? It was because Donald Trump won. Now, why is this important? This is important because when the squad first won that first round that got in, remember, they were very vocal. Rashida Tlaib said, we're going to impeach that mofo. AOC was protesting outside of Nancy Pelosi's office. Remember that? They were very vocal during that time. But if what Kyle says is true, that this was a response to Donald Trump winning, then it makes sense that the squad would be very vocal against Donald Trump, but there didn't seem to be a plan to make the squad vocal against the establishment in the Democratic Party. And I really believe that's part of the reason why you do not see them push back against Biden or Hakeem Jeffries or any of the other Democrat leaders. This came about out of his frustration for Donald Trump winning. That being said, the Justice Democrats, at the end of the day, were always going to end up protecting the Democratic Party, even the establishment of the Democratic Party, to prevent a Trump-like figure from getting into the White House again. Does this all make sense? And I believe that's how we got to where we are now, by the way. Let's continue.
And, for me, a big inspiration about it was FDR. Like when you go back and read the history of FDR's time in office, it's astonishing. It's something we've never seen in the modern era. It's somebody won the presidential election 4 times. This is before there were term limits. In fact, the Republicans looked at that and said, we need to do term limits because we'll never be able to beat these guys because they're too good. So he won the presidential election 4 times. And he also, at one point, held 80% of the House and 80% of the Senate. So just crushing majorities. Why? Because he delivered with the New Deal. And people said, oh, you help me, I will vote for you.
He delivered with the New Deal because the people rose up and pushed him, though. That's the piece. That's the other piece that's missing from Justice Democrats. The people on the outside, those politicians, once they won, they never connected again with the outside activists to push back against the establishment Democrats. It's not like FDR just woke up one day and said, I think I'm going to help the people. No, the people pushed FDR and said, you better help us. That was the difference.
And so we decided we need to fight back against the corporate Democrats and make the Democratic Party uncorrupted. And so the original working name for Justice Democrats was actually the Left Tea Party. And then after that, there was some disagreement around that one. And, because it sounds like you're being more right wing than left wing. So there's arguments on both sides. I understand that. But the whole idea was, let's have a Democratic faction which fights like the Tea Party fights Republican leadership. We want Democrats to fight Democratic leadership to go in a more progressive direction and represent the American people. And then, so the second name, I believe we were toying with New Deal Democrats. Again, that's the ode to FDR. Then I think eventually we went to Justice Party Democrats, and then we settled on Justice Democrats. So anyway, we started the group. I was on the board, as was Cenk. We never took a penny for doing any of this because we just wanted to do the right thing for the country. This wasn't about us personally. And
we're going to pause here for just a second. There's another thing I want to add. What was really interesting to me in reference to Justice Democrats is that we're always told that the co-founders were Kyle and Cenk, right? And he mentioned Chabari as well. But there's someone who was actually a really key player who also describes theirself as a co-founder. We're going to get into this in just a second because I had never, ever heard of this guy until yesterday when the information was sent to me. And with a little bit of digging and a little bit of research, I think I know why this person is not mentioned as one of the co-founders. We'll get into that in a second, but we're painting a picture here because I want you to see why I think the Justice Democrats ended up kind of selling out. So let me let him continue.
We were involved in every single board meeting. I wrote the platform for it. You had Shoykot and Corbin brought in all these candidates, and we punched way above our weight for the amount of money we were able to raise. But at the time, it was all small dollar donations. It was you guys donating, and we punched way above our weight. We got AOC to get rid of Joe Crowley. There's a number of Justice Democrats who are there now. Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. The list goes on and on. You guys know the deal. So here we are today, and what they say in this article is they're laying off 9 of their 20 staffers. Donations have dried up for Justice Democrats. Now, Marins also goes on to point out, well, it also dried up for Planned Parenthood, the Sierra Club. Like, this is sort of across the board. There are donations drying up. The Sunrise Movement, of course, also laid off 35 of their 100 staffers. They point out in the piece 62% of Justice Dems donations are small dollar donations. And the head of Justice Democrats, Alexandra Rojas, she takes very little pay compared to other people who are in a similar position and running a political group like this. She gets paid.
Let me hold on for a second. Two things. So Alexandra Rojas, remember, she was the one that actually was pro Neera Tanden. Remember that conversation? And everybody was upset because they said, why are Justice Democrats promoting Neera Tanden? Just keep that in mind. So that shows you where she was going. And this was over a year ago. So that shows you exactly where she was headed. And two, in reference to the small dollar donations, if small dollar donations have dried up, that's because the working class doesn't want to support this grift anymore. Small dollar donations are usually coming from working class people, maybe some middle class people, but those people decided we're not supporting this anymore. If I have to choose between donating money to Justice Democrats and paying for something else, I'm going to not donate to Justice Democrats because they're not fulfilling their promises and they've sold out to Democrat establishment. So what that means is that the working class is seeing through it.
$81,000 a year. And they just couldn't dot the I's and cross the T's and pay the bills. And so they were effectively sort of forced to lay off 9 of their 20 members.
Kyle doesn't say that. Notice how what I just told you, and notice what he leaves out. Notice how Kyle leaves out that people aren't donating to them anymore, those small dollar donations.
He also goes on to say, there's now dark money groups that are affiliated with the establishment Democrats who are spending big to beat JD candidates. We saw this with AIPAC and AIPAC-related groups and other groups who are like anything to defeat people who are even mildly more progressive than the establishment Democrats. And this cycle now, Justice Democrats is saying, we're only going to defend our incumbents. We're not.
You hear that? Listen to this. Hold on, let's go back a little bit.
We're even mildly more progressive than the establishment Democrats. And this cycle now, Justice Democrats is saying, we're only going to defend our incumbents. We're not going to support, upstarts in primaries to take out very conservative Democrats.
What does that tell you about the direction of Justice Democrats? They're only going to support the people who already made it in, which means that the future for Justice Democrats is not to produce more squads. So much for reforming the Democratic Party, right?
And that's where we are now. So they're trying to defend Jamal Bowman. Again, they have 0 people who are primarying conservative Democrats at this point in time. And they're just sort of slowly but surely going away or having less and less of an impact. So,
bingo. So Kyle Kulinski admits it. Justice Democrats is slowly going away, having less of an impact. One of the things that I think hurt that organization was when Kyle and Jink both stepped down. I forget the order, but if I remember correctly, one of them was asked to leave and then the other one apparently stepped down within solidarity kind of thing. I think anytime you have those people who were there from the very beginning of the organization, when they walk away from it, well, then it just leaves the organization in hands of people who may have other desires and other needs. And sometimes that desire could be more money, more notoriety, more fame. And I think that was one of the mistakes that happened. But the point that I wanted to point out in this particular clip is that he tells you right from the jump that he did this as a response to Donald Trump. So again, they're going to have that energy when it comes to fighting against conservatives. You see them do this on Twitter as well. They're very strong and loud about pushing back against conservatives. But for the most part, when it comes to the Dem establishment, they cower. They vote along with them and for legislation that they should not approve based on the principles of Justice Democrats that they pledge to commit to. So the whole reform thing, if it was going to be successful, It actually would have been more successful if Justice Democrats was probably started during a time when a Democrat president was in office. Like if Justice Democrats was started under Obama, or if Justice Democrats was started right now under Joe Biden. Think about it. Then it's very clear you're pushing back against the Democrat establishment. But it's very easy to be loud and vocal and to appear to be left when the person sitting in the White House is a Republican. So these are some of the things we got to think about. I'll let him go on for a little bit more, and then we're going to take a walk back in time, and I'm going to show you something else.
I want to give you some more what they say in here. They say there are no big donors on the left like there are on the right, and that's part of the problem is that, you know, when small donors aren't giving and you don't have any larger donors, then what do? And so they go.
But they did have larger donors. That's the thing. When I talk to people who previously worked with Justice Democrats after Kyle and Jink were gone, they did eventually start getting larger donors, though. So what happened to those large donors?
Go on to say, quote, a senior House progressive aide conceded that Justice Democrats aligned incumbents lacked cohesiveness and did not have regular group meetings with Justice Democrats. Though how much of that was due to the operation's limited funding is unclear. Other than some Israel bills, we never talked about legislation, the senior aide said. There's a perspective that people with JD win their race and come to Congress and do their own thing.
See?
Okay, so what went wrong here and what should they do? I mean, look, to me, the biggest thing is this. They lost their identity, right? And as a co-founder of the group, I can tell you, the whole idea was you're outsiders, you're uncorrupted, you don't take corporate PAC money, you don't take billionaire money, you raise through small dollar donations, and you guys are crusaders to end the corruption, to get a higher minimum wage, to get universal health care, to get strong unions, to fight on left policy and represent the American people. And you're supposed to be that Tea Party of the Democratic side and take on Democratic leadership who's complacent and super neoliberal. People like Nancy Pelosi, for example, who raise a tremendous amount of money from big donors and corporations, and then you could see it's reflected in the policies that they push. They always want to split the difference and, you know, help out their corporate donors while like mildly tweaking things and moving in an okay direction for the average person. We wanted to put an end to that because we feel like it's that weakness that helped bring us Trump. And so from my perspective, look, I think they lost their identity and I think they lost their mission, and they don't know if they're outsiders or just a regular Democratic group. And at this
No, I think they know exactly who they are, Kyle. I think they know exactly who they are. Now, I will say this loss of keeping in touch with them once they got into Congress for Justice Democrats just to kind of fall off and be like, okay, now you're on your own. That was also a mistake of the organization. That shouldn't have happened. But I think, you know, Kyle, it has to be pretty cringe for him to admit this because, again, he was a part of this from the very beginning. But the thing is, I think they know exactly who they are. And I think that they've been told, as we know from Nina Turner, when she admitted that they were threatened not to support her campaign. I think that they were told right from the jump, no, don't you even try to push back against Democrat leadership. Cynthia McKinney explained this very well when I interviewed her last year. She said that they told her early on, too, when she was in Congress, we do not go against Democrat leadership. So I think that's what's really, really happening here. And I think it's probably hard for Kyle to admit that. But the thing is they know exactly who they are. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're trying to keep their seat.
Point to look a hell of a lot more like a regular Democratic group. And that explains why a lot of small dollar donations have dried up. And so there's a laundry list of things we can get into that you can partly blame for the downfall of the group. But I think the core of it is what I just described. And I can speak to this in a pretty authoritative position because I was a co-founder of the group. I know what the mission was. But apparently, you know, under the leadership now, and Cenk and I have been affiliated with the group for a very long time, but like under the leadership now, I don't think they have that same mission. I don't think their goal is we're going to be incredibly organized. We're going to be incredibly cohesive. We're going to work together. We're going to strategize, and we're going to push Democratic leadership, and we're going to make a lot of noise, and we're going to drag the conversation towards, we're not bending on something like increasing the minimum wage. This is like an 80% issue in the country, and we're going to make a lot of noise, and we're going to fight on it. We're going to draw a red line, and we're going to use our political capital. You know?
But according to Cori Bush, remember what she said, when they go to vote, they vote alone. They're not voting as a squad. They're not voting as Justice Democrats. When they go to vote on legislation, they're voting alone. That was Cori Bush's statement.
Oh, and I mean, I think that's the problem. And I think if people saw a fight from Justice Democrats, if people saw a group that was working together in a cohesive sense, then I think they would donate more. I mean, so we're seeing a little glimpse of this recently. Bernie's holding up Biden appointments, and he's telling Biden, you better lower the cost of prescription drugs, because Biden has the authority to do that on his own. He's saying, you better lower the cost of prescription drugs, or I'm just going to keep blocking this person. Okay, what if, instead of just Bernie, what if it was a group of like 18 Democrats in the House? And especially back when you had a Democratic majority, you absolutely could throw your weight around and try to impact change. And then,
but they know this, Kyle. I'm sorry. They know that. Like, this is not something I think that needs to be explained to them. They are well aware of what they could do with the leverage that they have. These are all grown ass people. Like, let's be real. Okay. And Bernie Sanders out here taking campaign money and wiring it to his nonprofit. So he might not be the best person to point to right now either. I'll just keep that clear. Now, let's go back to the beginning. We're going to go back to the beginning when it was announced that there was going to be the Justice Democrats. And there's a couple things I want to point out from this video compared to now. Let's go ahead and dive in. This is the Humanist Report sharing the announcement from Secular Talk.
The Young Turks and Kyle Kulinski of Secular Talk have teamed up with veterans of Bernie Sanders' campaign to launch a new initiative to take over the Democratic Party once and for all. So it's called Justice Democrats, and this is something that I am overwhelmingly excited about. Now, the first question, before we even get to what Justice Democrats are, is why even bother with the Democratic Party? Because I talk about how the Democratic Party is a lost cause and how they're rotten to the core. So why not just start a new party? Why not take all of the resources that Justice Democrats can raise and funnel this towards creating a brand new party that we're in control of? Well, I'll let Kyle Kulinski explain why that might not be the best strategy.
And all of the institutional biases against third parties are so immensely strong that we're effectively handicapping ourselves if we go into it trying to do a third party.
But one of the principles of Justice Democrats was to make third party and independent candidates more viable. That's one of the principles. Look this up, Google it. I've shown it on the show multiple times. I feel like I don't need to show it again. But that's one of the principles that was listed there, was to make that more viable. That piece, that core principle from the organization, that piece never happened. I don't even want to say like it started. It never happened, period. And that's why we're kind of in the spot that we are now, because it's like in the situations where they have failed, if that would have been done, we'd have those third party and those independent candidates. And I'm going to show you another clip as well to show you what the audience wanted, because that's important for people to go back and see, what did the audience actually ask for?
It's like taking a sledgehammer, swinging it at your kneecap, and then saying, okay, now it's time to go run that marathon you spoke about. Well, if I'm going to run the marathon, I should be in tip-top shape now, shouldn't I? I should give myself the best possible chance, not the worst chance. So, for example, the Green Party, who I absolutely love, they've had some successes here and there, but by and large, they are not what's viewed as a viable third party. And again, it's not their fault. It's the fault of the institutional biases against them and against third parties in general.
And he's referring to the national level. On the local level, Green Party candidates have won and still continue to win. And that's another mistake, I think, with Justice Democrats, is that there was too much focus on the national level and not the local level. You need to have all those bases covered, right? So instead of just focusing on candidates running for Congress or trying to take over the House, as they put it, why weren't they also at the same time, like simultaneously, focusing on candidates to win mayor races or these gubernatorial races, city council. That way you're fighting on all fronts. Let's continue.
If you're a member of the Green Party and you're a member of the Democratic Socialists, let me tell you right now, you are our allies. I view you as our allies. So I don't want people to take it the wrong way. I need them to understand exactly where we're coming from. And if you read the platform of the Justice Democrats, we specifically refer to reforms that we favor that would help third parties and remove some of those institutional biases. But based on our calculations, our highest chance of winning and actually getting the policies we want implemented is to take over the Democratic Party.
How's that working out in reference to implementing policies, guys? On the national level, how's that work out? $15 minimum wage didn't happen. Still don't have Medicare for all. This is why it was important to fight on all fronts, not just the national level. So let me let him continue here.
So in my opinion, I think Kyle's logic here is absolutely sound. And I've kind of made similar arguments here. I've stated that, yes, unfortunately, we have to begrudgingly work within the Democratic Party, but simultaneously try to build a viable third-party alternative because, unfortunately, with our two-party system, with our single-member district plurality, winner-take-all system, it's really difficult for a third party to gain prominence in the United States currently. So I agree that it's...
So he said simultaneously trying to create some type of a third party. Again, that never happened. And even though, like, you listen to the rhetoric then and you listen to the rhetoric now, it's like, you know, what was his comment in reference to Cornel West deciding to run third party? Oh, Mike was against it. So what happened? Something changed. Something changed. And I want to show you what the audience said. This was Mike's own audience. He had a poll. Should progressives pursue Justice Democrats, draft Bernie, or go green? Let me show you what the viewers said. This is important, I think.
Even though it's the case that progressives might be on the same page when it comes to policy substance, when it comes to strategy, I've seen considerable disagreement among the progressive community. So, case in point, if we're talking about,
Pause. That part right there, let's say this again. This part's important because for people who come after RBN, listen to this.
Even though it's the case that progressives might be on the same page when it comes to policy substance, when it comes to strategy, I've seen considerable disagreement among the progressive community. So,
even back then, when it came to strategy, there were disagreements. So when people come after us at RBN and say, "Oh, you guys are ridiculous because you don't like the strategy. Your idea is stupid. It's a dumb da-da-da." This is not a new thing. Even back then, at the start of Justice Democrats, there was disagreement in reference to strategy, and I'm going to let him show you the poll.
Case in point, if we're talking about, reforming the Democratic Party and taking over the Democratic Party, people will often argue, it's rotten to the core. You can't really do that. It's impossible. It's the party that's the problem. But if you talk about creating a third party, even if that party isn't necessarily politically viable or electorally viable, at least, even if we're using it as leverage, people will counter with the argument that that's just not something that's feasible with our current electoral system. And if you want a third party or more political parties, you've got to get electoral reform. And I think that both arguments are absolutely persuasive. Both sides have points that are really important. And this is why I've been someone who believes in the kitchen sink approach, where you kind of take all the strategies, throw them at the wall, and see what sticks. So
that never happened.
I don't want people to think that they're forced to choose one strategy over the other. I want you to know that you can support reforming and taking over the Democratic Party while simultaneously trying to build up a viable Green Party or third party or People's Party.
That never happened. That's the problem.
So what I decided to do to kind of gauge where progressives are at is I took to Patreon to poll my viewers with the question, going forward, which of the following strategies should we employ to get progressive policies codified into law? and 56% agree that we need a multifaceted approach. So in total, 21% think that we should try to reform or take over the Democratic Party, with the likes of Justice Democrats.
Pausing right here. I want you to have a chance to look at this poll. 20% said reform the party. 6% said build up the Green Party. 18% said start a new People's Party, hashtag draft Bernie. Remember, this is going back to the day when Nick Brana tried to do that whole draft Bernie thing, right? But what do the majority of the viewers say? The majority of the viewers said all of the above. 55% of the viewers said all of those things should happen. And the problem is, so basically, they went against what the viewers actually wanted and decided to focus on just reforming the Democratic Party. None of those other things were even touched. Building on the Green Party, they didn't do it. Start a new People's Party, that was Nick Brana, and that's different from what they were talking about at that point in time. The People's Party is a populist party. They were talking about a progressive thing. Anyway, the point is they wanted you to do all three, which included third parties. This just reminds me of when TYT didn't listen to their own audience. Their own audience was telling them, yes, force the vote for Medicare for all, and they went against what their own viewers wanted.
And brand new Congress. 7% think we should build up the Green Party. 17% thinks we should start a new People's Party with the draft Bernie movement. And 56% think we should try to do all of those things at once. And once again, with this poll, I am in complete agreement. So getting to some of the comments, Jason King makes the point that the Democrats poll worse than Trump overall. Democrat is now a toxic brand and will hurt any chance of a progressive winning an election. Progressives need to team up with Nick Brana and push for a progressive party.
You see that? Like I told you, this didn't happen. This didn't happen. They said, now we have our criticisms of Nick Brana today, but it says progressives need to team up with Nick Brana and push for a progressive party. When we talk about the founders of the Justice Democrats, oftentimes, again, it's Kyle and Jink. What about Zach? What about Zach Exley? You ever hear about this guy? Zach Exley, here's a picture of him here. This guy, let's scroll down here. I'm going to show you something. Let me highlight it so you can see. Politico reported in August 2015 that Exley had joined the 2016 Bernie Sanders presidential campaign as a senior advisor responsible for digital communications. He co-founded the Justice Democrats and Brand New Congress. Do you know Zach? Let me show you again. Here's his picture. How come you don't hear about this guy? How come you don't hear about, when we talk about Justice Democrats and they talk about the co-founders, it's always people say Kyle and Jink. How come you never hear them say Zach Exley? And if Zach Exley co-founded Brand New Congress, why was he also a co-founder for Justice Democrats? Those are two different things. You have to remember Ro Khanna and Pramila Jayapal came from Brand New Congress. Now, they're on the Justice Democrats website, but they didn't start at Justice Democrats. They came from Brand New Congress. And then when Justice Dems and Brand New Congress kind of merged together, that's how they became a Justice Democrat. Nightwolf said, Zach, who is he? You're going to find out. You ever see this guy? Look at his face. Take a good look at him. Have you seen this guy? No? Okay. Well, let's see a little bit more about Zach. I think I know why Zach is not mentioned. So even on Zach's website, Just in case you don't trust Wikipedia. Just in case you don't trust Wikipedia. This is Zach's website. Listen to this. Before I co-founded Justice Democrats and Brand New Congress, campaigns to replace every corrupt and complicit member of U.S. Congress with a slate of honest and visionary local leaders, they made a beautiful movie about us that you can watch on YouTube or Netflix. They made a movie about, but you never heard of this guy. I think I know why. Zach was connected in some weird spaces. Because you see, going back to this article, open letter anti-Trump super PAC launching. Let's go down here. Just going to go right to the names. Though the PAC isn't revealing its funding as of now, Not Who We Are is drawing on purpose, which leverages technology towards social change efforts. Purpose Chief Technology Officer Josh Hindler will be the PAC's campaign manager. The group is also picking 5 of the 8 younger Bernie Sanders digital staffers who bolted his Our Revolution group 2 weeks ago after the senator brought back his campaign manager, Jeff Weaver, to run it. Let's highlight the names. These people will be important in just a second. I'm going to show you. Here's the people: Hector Segala, Kenneth Pennington, Zach Exley, Jose Martinez Diaz, and Aiden King. Lavera, a former press aide to the Democratic National Committee, and the New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, is running communications for the PAC. Pay attention to the first 3 names: Hector Segala, Kenneth Pennington, and once again, there's Mr. Zach. Now, this was in response again to Trump. Pay attention, folks. Open letter anti-Trump super PAC launching. And go back to what I just told you about the first video that we talked about with Kyle, saying he started Justice Dems because of the frustration with Trump winning. So it was a response to Donald Trump. Now, those names. One more time: Hector Segala, Kenneth Pennington, and Zach Exley. These names also appear for a company called Middle Seat, which is a consulting company. I reported about this a year ago. I'm going to show you a clip from that. Middle Seat is a consulting company, but it was revealed over a year ago that they actually were the middleman between progressive Justice Democrats campaigns and establishment Democrat campaigns like Beto O'Rourke. Let's see those names again, because they are also a part of Middle Seat. Let's scroll down. Watch. I told you got to make these connections, man. This is all a fucking sham. Like, I'm sorry, but I can't. Hector Segala right here. There's Hector Segala. Right there. You see him? Right next to Hector is Kenneth Pennington. He's the one on the little scooter here. That's him right there rolling towards you. There's Kenneth Pennington. And I forgot the other one. Hold on. Oh, and Zach. I forgot where I found Zach. Let's see if Zach is still on here, because he was one of them too. We're going to do a control. Zach's on the other one. Do you see these guys? Okay. So again, these guys are connected. Hector Segala, Kenneth Pennington are also a part of Middle Seat. About We believe real change is possible. We are not cookie cutter DC consultants. We're not in this for cocktail parties or the connections. We're here for the movement. Middle Seat is a team of writers, designers, coders, and strategists passionate about making real change. Is that true? I don't think so. Oh, I thought I had a timestamp for this. No? Let me go to the timestamp. Hold on. Oh, I know where it's at. Who is Middle Seat? I covered this over a year ago. Let's scroll right to that part right there. Making sure I'm starting right at the chart. Okay. Paula Jean Swearigan let the cat out the bag. Zeneb wrote the article. Follow the money and you'll find out. This is disgusting. Small dollar donors' money took a middle seat to democracy and made these people rich. Listen to this. Again, for those just joining, I covered this a year ago. Listen. Oh, boy. It's all coming out now, folks. It is all coming out now. Now, this is from MPP broke this. I know MPP has its issues, but that doesn't dispute what was discovered here. This is Middle Seat, ladies and gentlemen. You may not be familiar with Middle Seat. So let me read this, and then you'll understand why this is a problem. The AOC Beto Biden 48 million connection. Middle Seat. Going to scroll down. Let me go ahead and make this larger for you because this text is tiny. Oh, I like that. Middle Seat's founders are no strangers to progressive messaging. Founders Zach Exley, Kenneth Pennington, and Hector Segala. There's those names again. What do you know? The same guy, Zach Exley, co-founder of Brand New Congress and Justice Democrats, also teamed up with these same buddy bros of his to found Middle Seat. All previously held roles on Bernie Sanders' 2016 presidential campaign. Kenneth Pennington and Hector Segala went on to work a short stint with Our Revolution following Sanders' campaign before founding Middle Seat. Middle Seat, like many other political contractors, often have a heavy influence on what their clients are presenting to the public. Their suite of services includes social media, texting, web design, advertising, organizing, and even campaign strategy. Noting on their website that they work with campaigns and organizations to build and grow their impact in the progressive space. The firm is very close with Justice Democrats, having been formed in conjunction with each other by some of the same people and essentially serving as the for-profit wing of the pack. The Justice Democrats' connection to Middle East run deep, considering Zach Exley was also a founder of Justice Democrats in Brand New Congress. There you go. Together, both organizations have established a recruitment pipeline where Justice Democrats find candidates and set them up with Middle Seat, which moderates their message and aligns it with the Democratic Party establishment while making millions and keeping their influence invisible to the public and the movement. You are not supposed to even know who they are. And they like it that way. I'm going to fast forward a little bit so we go to the chart, because the chart is where you get to see the dollar amounts. So let me fast forward. This was a long clip. Oh, here we go. Right about here. Yeah. Now, somebody explain to me, why is Beto O'Rourke in the same table as these Justice Democrats? Somebody explain this to me. Why are they a part of the same system? AOC, Ro Khanna, Justice Democrats PAC, Jamal Bowman, Squad Victory Fund, Ayanna Pressley and affiliated PACs, Pramila Jayapal, Alex Morse, what I am incredibly shocked by.
Incredibly shocked by him. Middle seats total revenue. Here we go. Guys, this goes through 2021. So this includes Justice.
Look at the dates too, guys. 2017 to 2021.
Democrats candidates who ran and who won in 2018 and the ones who won in 2020. You cannot be progressive and be connected to an organization that is moving you to the right.
You guys see what's happening now? And what have they been doing when they vote? They've been moving to the right. There's more.
You cannot be progressive and be connected to an organization that is also working with Beto, Charles Booker, Katie Porter, and Joe Biden. Why is Joe Biden on here? Where is all this money go? I told you guys a while back on the show with Rob, I told you Justice Democrats had dark money too. I mentioned the money that came from George Soros, which, by the way, George Soros also gives money to the Sunrise Movement.
There's also on this list the Working Families Party, the Action PAC, Real Justice PAC, and Move On. So let me fast forward a little bit because there's another piece. Yeah. I'll show you because they had it on their website. Watch this. I'm going to show you how they were all connected to Joe Biden and why they support Joe Biden. Watch this.
Middle seat, ladies and gentlemen. Listen
this.
to the messaging they have here. The digital firm for progressive causes and candidates. We support campaigns, organizations, and causes fighting for racial justice, climate action, immigrant rights, intersectional feminism. Oh, they're coming with the buzzwords. Economic justice and more. Sounds good, right? Middle Seat is a full service media and fundraising firm for progressive causes and candidates. Our work includes advertising, fundraising. Here we go. Fundraising. What I tell you? Development, creative, organizing, and strategy. Our work. So I scrolled down and I said, well, let me check out the work. The first person I see is Ayanna Pressley. That makes sense. They say they support progressive candidates. Ayanna Pressley is on here. She's a progressive politician. That makes sense.
Wait for the next one.
Right? But then I scrolled down further. And I'm going to say this in my grandmother's voice, the way that my grandma would say this. How would my grandma say this? Rest in peace, Grandma. If she saw this, she would say, well, why in the hell is Joe Biden on the progressive site?
You guys see what's happening here? They're all on this together. This is why I said in reference to that Kyle video, they're grown ass people. They know exactly what they're doing. Some of you may have never even heard of Middle Seat until tonight, unless you were with me last year and you saw this last year. But some of this money, and I'll show you here too. There's all the stuff for Biden. They had all this on their website. Look, they're supposed to be for the progressives, right? Look what they had on the website. They were like promoting Joe Biden. And then what I want to show you again with this chart, and I wish I still had that article, but you can watch the video and hear the whole thing. I just don't want to bore you to death. But what you notice with this chart is if we go back up to the top, basically what they end up telling you is, Aneb ends up explaining in this article, chances are if you donated to some of those progressive, Middle Seat acting kind of as that middleman there, some of that money went to people like Beto O'Rourke and Joe Biden. And it was done through Middle Seat. It was done through Middle Seat. So they take that money, they say, you put your money in Middle Seat, and then Middle Seat take that money and they funnel it into the Biden campaign. All these people are connected. And I honestly believe this is why you don't hear much about Zach Exley, co-founder of Justice Democrats. You notice they never say this man's name? More receipts. This is from the FEC. Look, we're going from 2015 to 2024. Look at this. Spender, Bowman. So we got Jamal Bowman, McClellan, Katie Porter, Fetterman, Pramila, Summer Lee, Ayanna Presley, and then the names start to repeat. Look at this. Jamal Bowman, spender, recipient, middle seat, $2,500. Guys, they can't deny this if they want to. This is all on the FEC. McClellan, middle seat, $75. That one's not as crazy. Look at this. Katie Porter, $35,000. John Fetterman, $25,000. All to middle seat, guys. Pramila Jayapal, $5,000. Summer Lee for Congress, $5,500. Ayanna Presley, over $10,000. And if I sorted from amount, Beto, $3 million. I told you all of them are connected through middle seat. Honey, let me tell you, this is a mess. Look at all this money. Fetterman, $500,000, middle seat consulting. That's what went wrong with Justice Democrats. Money. That's what went wrong. And I show you this again because this go to show you if they're both a part of the same consulting firm here and they're both regressives and the establishment Democrats, the money coming into middle seat and some of the money that was donated to Jamal Bowman or AOC going towards Joe Biden or Beto O'Rourke, that means to tell you they were never going to fight against the establishment Democrats. I hope that answers the question for everybody. And I hope now you know who Zach Exley is. Because you don't see this guy's face. And in a sense, it almost seemed like Jink and Kyle were the media people. So you got the consultants, you have Zach and you have Hector and Kenneth. You got the consultants. And then now you need the media people to come in to give it an audience. And that's where you got Kyle and Jink. Now, I don't know if they knew about all of this. They may not have known at the very beginning. I don't know. I don't have receipts that say that they did. But to answer Kyle's question, this is what happened. Money happened. If you haven't had a chance to do so, make sure you go ahead and answer the poll. And I'm going to go to the comments and then I'll do the poll and we'll get to the Jimmy story. Monarch says, so basically Justice Democrats are anti-MAGA Democrats. Basically. There was never really going to be, whether Kyle and Jink wanted that or not, there was never going to be any real push against the Dem establishment. The money shows you that. Delthea said, and FDR had a Congress that came with him that was peopled with many members more leftist than him and more beholding to leftist organizations than they were to right-wing donors. Bingo. Thank you for the super chat, Colin. That aligns with what Rojas said at the Squad Victory event I went to. She told the audience to give money to keep the squad members in office. No mention of growing the squad. There you go. There you go. That's why when people make the argument, if we just get more of them in, they're not trying to get no more in. Thank you for the super chat, DC. Justice Democrats is literally a corporate PAC. Whoever says money, well, there's your problem. And Queen says, I am no longer donating to any of these thieves. Yeah, this is why I don't, after Bernie and the squad, like I do not donate to politicians. I can't, sorry. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip, Roger. Regarding it would have been better if they formed under a Dem president. There's no way a party would do that, because just like they chose to do it under a GOP president, the Tea Party did the same thing. This is the problem with parties. Their very existence caused compromise, which is why we must cast them into the irrelevancy by getting registered independent past 50% and run CBIs as amendments to abolish. And thank you for this tip as well. Kyle and Jink's first mistake was letting their pride get in the way because they did not want to give DORE a win, not to mention they had too much emotion and energy invested in making this work. Second mistake was not listening to us, the base, when we were warning them. In the waning days of me watching TYT, I super chatted Jink, why not run California CBIs? To so many words, he said, I hear you, but we're going, I think you mean we're not going that way. Oh, we're going that way. Yeah. Yeah. Well. Moving on to something a little bit more entertaining. Jimmy Dore did interview Marianne Williamson, and I do not think that this went well for Marianne at all. I would like to have been a fly on that wall at the end of that interview to see what her campaign thought of her performance. We're going to focus on the subject about Russia and Ukraine, since you know how YouTube can be. I can't focus on the pandemic conversation, unfortunately. But we're going to dive into this discussion. And actually, at the very beginning of this video, when he's actually introducing Marianne, there's something that's mentioned that I want to bring to your attention. I don't know if everybody noticed this, but here we go.
We have special guests with us. Marianne Williamson is here. She's a best-selling author, lecturer, activist, as well as a 2024 Democratic candidate for president of the United States. She previously ran in 2020, and in 1989, she founded Project Angel Food, a nonprofit that delivers meals to ill and dying homebound patients. In 2004, she co-founded the Peace Alliance, a nonprofit.
That part right there. In 2004, she co-founded the Peace Alliance. What does that organization do? Eric, if you have a moment, can you Google Peace Alliance? And the reason why I ask is because that sounds like that would be something like anti-war, right? Like no war, no fighting, peace, right? I'm curious. Let me know if you find it, Eric. But that organization, let's look into that, guys, and see what does that organization actually do.
Profit grassroots education and advocacy organization focused on increasing U.S. government support of peace-building approaches to domestic and international conflicts. Please welcome back to the show, Marianne Williamson. How are you doing?
So you hear that? Peace approaches. Now, I bring this up because it doesn't seem to align with her foreign policy stance. Let's continue.
I'm good, thank you, Jimmy. It's nice to see you, and thank you for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. Now, last time we talked, you weren't sure about Medicare for All or Julian Assange, and I think you have different stances on both those things. How do you feel about Julian Assange now?
Take those charges down day one.
You would not prosecute him. You'd let him free. Let him go
Absolutely
free.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. On Julian Assange, when we spoke before, which was years ago now,
right?
I wasn't so sure. I'm certainly sure about that now. And on Medicare for All, you were one of the people that I think started to really change my mind. Actually,
okay.
It wasn't that long ago. It was kind of funny when she said, "Oh, it was years ago." Now it wasn't that long ago. You ran for president in 2020, so I don't want people watching this to think this happened like, I don't know, 6 years ago or something. It really wasn't long ago.
Okay, so you're a full backer of Medicare for All?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
completely.
that certainly separates you from the rest of the Democratic primary pack, because Joe Biden is determined to not let people get health care. He didn't give us the public option he promised, and he's now repealing Medicare for people that had it during the pandemic. So, Marianne, how did the Democratic Party become the party of censorship and war?
Well, I don't, when it comes to being the party of war, I think both of them, I mean, both, when it comes to big oil and defense contractors, both the Republicans and the Democrats are in lockstep with their corporate donors on that. So,
pause. Okay. Yes, we know that. Yes, that's true that both parties do that. But that wasn't the question. Jimmy was specifically asking her, how did the Democratic Party change? How did the Democratic Party go from being like this anti-war party to like this pro-war party? What Marianne tried to do was come in and both sides it and say, oh yeah, well, both parties are, become pro-war and they're part of the military industrial complex. They really got a hold on them, stuff like that. But the question that he was asking is, why did the Democratic Party change? And Marianne didn't answer that question. And I think the reason why she didn't answer that question is because, number one, she'd have to admit that the party did change and did become more pro-war. And I don't think she wanted to admit that. Let's go on.
I don't think of it as the party of war any more than the Republicans are, actually. I mean, you can look at individuals, but I just think of the military-industrial complex as having its grip on both parties, actually. So it's really more, how did the U.S. government become so hostage to Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, and Boeing? That is the question in my mind.
I mean, even people who don't take corporate money in the Democratic Party are for the Ukraine war, and they just vote for military budgets. They vote for that's the reason why it stands out, is because the Democratic Party was supposed to be a left party. They were supposed to be anti-war. Everybody always expected the Republican Party to be right-wing and pro-war, and so that's why it's a different thing now. And everybody in the Democratic Party votes for war. They're all war pigs, and there's a big faction of the Republicans who aren't. In fact, we just covered a story with Matt Gaetz, who wants us to get out of Africa. You'll never hear Democrats do that. Why is that?
Well, first of all, I'm not enrolled in your perspective on pro-war. I think that.
What? Look at the look on Jimmy's face. This is hilarious. I'm sorry. Like, if you look at, she said she's not enrolled in his, hold on.
Wants us to get out of Africa. You'll never hear Democrats do that. Why is that?
Well, first of all, I'm not enrolled in your perspective on pro-war. I think.
But what he said was true. It's not perspective if it's fact. Like, come on. I don't understand. I don't understand this at all, man. It's just like, I'm not enrolled in your perspective of pro-war.
That there are a lot of people who are very, very concerned about the power of the U.S. war machine.
Which ones would those be?
Well, for one, me. I mean,
no, I'm talking about Democrats in Congress or who are elected.
I can't speak so much about Democrats in Congress, because I think of Democrats in Congress as so beholden to the corporatist Democratic leadership when push comes to shove. Obviously, I do. I wouldn't be running. Notice I'm running and they're not. So a lot of people who say they're progressives who are in Congress fall in line when it comes to that. But I think that there are many of us who do not look at it that way and still have a different view, perhaps, than you do on when it comes to
the point that Jimmy was trying to make is that the Democrats in Congress, when it comes to especially voting on legislation, they've been supporting these wars. And Marianne has to know that. I mean, it's been discussed over and over again for the past almost 2 years, how they've been voting. So when she says she doesn't know about Democrats in Congress, that tells me that she hasn't been doing her research, but she wants to run for president. Let's continue.
Your view on the Ukraine war?
Well, I certainly am not naive about how we got there. I certainly understand that the U.S. Poked the bear. I certainly understand about the Aegis missiles in Poland. I don't feel that I'm naive at all about how the U.S. war machine works. However, it's kind of like you look at someone like Dwight Eisenhower. On one hand, he is the man who coined the phrase military-industrial complex, and he was the supreme commander of all Allied forces in World War II. It's not an either-or. You can be aware that the military is profiteering and causing a real terrible problem, as he realized after all that was over at the end of his presidency, and at the same time feels strongly that certain lines must be drawn, certain boundaries, and certain people must be stopped. So
no. Because you're still supporting the military industrial complex if you do that, Marianne. If you can't both sides, hold on. Let me go back. She's both siding this. Listen to this.
Understand that the U.S. Poked the bear. I certainly understand about the Aegis missiles in Poland. I don't feel that I'm naive at all about how the U.S. war machine works. However, it's kind of like you look at someone like Dwight Eisenhower. On one hand, he is the man who coined the phrase military-industrial complex, and he was the supreme commander of all Allied forces in World War II. It's not an either-or. You can be aware that the military is profiteering in and causing a real terrible problem, as he realized after all that was over at the end of his presidency, and at the same time feel strongly that certain lines must be drawn, certain boundaries, and certain people must be stopped.
So I guess those lines were drawn through Ukraine, right? Certain boundaries must be drawn, certain people must be stopped. Doesn't that require weapons? And if it requires weapons, aren't you still supporting the military industrial complex? And why do people keep bringing up all these people from the past, man? Like, what is it with this, man? I don't know if it's her or RFK Jr. who does this the most. They keep bringing up ghosts of our past, like Dwight Eisenhower, RFK Sr., JFK, back during such and such time, and back when this person was around. That was a long time ago. It's 2023. Why you keep bringing up all these old people that's dead and gone? It's a very different time now than it was when Dwight Eisenhower was president. It is a very different time now than it was when JFK was president. Why we keep going back to these people, man, as if we're living in the same time right now, dealing with the same issues right now as we did when they were president. Let me continue. They kill me with that, man.
So when you look at what happened last weekend in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, 40 nations coming together, that's very important what happened last weekend. With China, India was there, Brazil was there. And I think that many of us feel, I feel that actually the fact that Ukraine got some support that it's gotten from the United States and other Western nations is part of what has opened up the possibilities that exist right now for real negotiation, because it will be other countries. This is not just about what the United States.
They could have negotiated in the very beginning. In the very beginning, negotiations were on the table. Russia was willing to negotiate. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, well, this opened up the door to more negotiations. They already had the opportunity to negotiate, Marianne. You don't see this as a money laundering scheme for what it is. I told you she's horrible on foreign policy. And I'm not a foreign policy expert, but I can see this shit. Let me continue.
With China, India was there, Brazil was there. And I think that many of us feel, I feel that actually the fact that Ukraine got some support that it's gotten from the United States and other Western nations is part of what has opened up the possibilities that exist right now for real negotiation, because it will be other countries. This is not just about what the United States says. Most things when it comes to military around the world, it's not a unipolar world anymore. It's multipolar. A lot of nations are involved in this. And so I think we should all be glad about what seems to have begun to happen in Saudi Arabia last weekend.
A lot of nations are involved because of NATO. A lot of nations are involved because of NATO. We talked about this earlier on RBN earlier today, the fact that the people in Germany, for the most part, the majority did not approve of sending Leopard tanks to Ukraine. But Germany felt like they were pushed to do so. I mean, the administration, they were pushed to do so because Joe Biden had announced that the U.S. would be sending tanks into Ukraine. And so since Germany is an ally of the United States, they felt like they were pushed to do it. It's just, Let's stop pretending like one day all these countries just woke up and said, oh, hey, yeah, we're going to try to help too. We're going to try to send weapons and things too. They have an agreement. You could tell Jimmy's not feeling this.
So I'm trying to figure. So you're saying you support Joe Biden's policy in Ukraine?
What I don't support about Joe Biden's policy is when he says for as long as it takes. He and Lord Austin just talk about how we're just giving money for as long as it takes. We need to be in support of a negotiated settlement.
In other words, what Marianne is saying is she may not agree with the Biden administration prolonging this war and saying as long as it takes, but she damn sure agrees with them giving them the money and the weapons and the health care, by the way, which they're not giving you. Because when we break down those packages, when Glenn Greenwald broke down those packages, the first earlier on packages, they had health care in the package. Now they're going to give them health care, but they won't give everybody in the United States health care. They just announced they're sending about 20 billion to Ukraine again. Meanwhile, you have people in Hawaii running from the freaking fires. Over 1,000 people in Hawaii right now can't be accounted for. Where's their $20 billion? Where's the $20 billion to people in East Palestine, Ohio, who've been poisoned in their own damn community? But she is okay with the money going there. They use these words like support. She's okay with the money going there. She just has a disagreement with the time period. Let me continue.
So there already was a
Of course, theoretically, you would say, I mean, Jake Sherman was there. So to some extent, of course,
you're aware that in 2014 that the CIA couped the Ukrainian government with the help of the right-wing Nazis. And then the people in the eastern part of Ukraine in the Donbass didn't want to go along with that couped government. And so Ukraine started shelling them. The government of Ukraine, the couped government started shelling them. And so they had the peace agreement called the Minsk Accords, which we now know which was going to give the people in the Donbass, they would stop shelling them and that they would give them some kind of independence because they were the Russian speakers in that country in the east part. And so Ukraine never followed that peace agreement. And now we know, because Angela Merkel and others have revealed it, that they never intended on following that peace agreement, and they didn't, and they kept shelling those people in the Donbass. And when Putin invaded, it was to stop that shelling. So were you aware of that history?
I am aware of what you are saying.
Oh, Jesus Christ. This is bad. This is really bad. Mr. X, you're correct. This is bad. Who's running for president, Marianne or Jimmy? I don't know how many times I continue to have to keep saying this. Marianne is still not educated on this issue. Jimmy had to lay all of this out for her to explain to her how they got to be in this situation to begin with in the first. Like I told you, they had an opportunity for peace negotiations. So he had to explain all this history of it to her. And then her response is just, I've heard what you have said, basically. But she don't necessarily agree with what he said. What was false about what he just said? What was false about what? She's running for president. Are we serious here? Are we serious here? Do you want Marianne Williamson to have her hand on the button for the nukes? Do you want Marianne Williamson in charge of foreign policy? Let's continue.
And when Putin invaded, it was to stop that shelling. So were you aware of that history?
I am aware of what you are saying. I am not enrolled in your interpretation of exactly what you are saying.
Here she go with this. I'm not enrolled. I'm not enrolled with your interpretation. Like, all you have to do is you can read this on your own. Like, I've read this on my own. It's just that I'm not enrolled in your interpretation of events. Those things are true. This woman not serious, man. She not serious. This ain't no presidential campaign. What is this? You go on to Jimmy Dore's show. What, Jimmy has what, over 1 million subscribers? You go on to one of the largest shows in independent media, and you just basically reveal to everyone. How many people saw this video? This is the clip. How many people saw this? Over 140,000 views. Okay. You revealed to over 140,000 people, and however many people were watching the live stream during that time, that you are not informed about this issue with Russia and Ukraine, but you're running for president? This not serious, man. This not serious.
I am not. I do.
So what do you disagree with?
I'll tell you the problem I have with it. I do not believe that Ukraine is nothing but a puppet of the United States. So we're not going to agree on that.
Oh boy. Like, all you got to do is just follow the money. BlackRock trying to set up shop in Ukraine. Come on, man. It's just like, how can you not? Jimmy was nice and said you're adorable, but she's ridiculous.
So if we stop funding the Ukraine government, the Ukraine government shuts down. Do you know that? Do you know if we stop funding the Ukraine government shuts down, right? We're paying every person in the Ukraine government salary. We're paying their Social Security. You know that, right? Or maybe you don't.
Let me ask you if you know, because I don't like being talked to like, do you know? So
I'm asking, do you know that?
She doesn't know. No, she really don't know. That's why I said, guys, this is not serious. There's no way. You're talking about foreign policy. Jimmy Dore had to educate you on this issue with Russia and Ukraine. And she was laughing this up. She was just laughing a minute ago. What's funny? What's fucking funny? You running for president, you will be in charge in reference to making foreign policy decisions. This is not a funny laughing time. That's why I know this ain't serious.
You know what? I know. Listen, I'm not saying that everything is clean between the United States.
I'm asking you, did you know that?
I know that there are all kinds of business dealings.
So you don't know that? You didn't know that?
That there is money being paid to Ukraine.
That we are paying their entire government salary. You didn't know that? And that's how we could force a peace agreement tomorrow, is because we would just take back that money and their government collapse.
You're right.
Okay.
That we completely...
Jesus, this is bad. This is bad. This is bad. It would have been different. It's not bad for Jimmy. It's bad for Marianne. It would have been different if this happened on a smaller show, but this happened on Jimmy Dore's show where over 140,000 people saw this. It just...
withdrew support from Ukraine, the government of Ukraine would collapse. I certainly understand that. The difference you and I have is that you seem to think that would be a great thing. I don't. I don't think the Russians having complete control of Ukraine and getting their way in this situation is good for Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Finland, Sweden.
Getting their way. They offered peace negotiations in the beginning. They offered Oh my goodness.
And I do not believe that that means there would be peace in Europe. There would be anything but peace in Europe.
So you're just another pro-war Democrat. You really don't have anything. You're not really against war. You're for this war and all the propaganda that goes along with it, because this was provoked by NATO. There's no point to even have NATO. I mean, this is really disappointing.
Yeah, to answer that question, she is. She's just another pro-war Democrat. The only difference between her and Joe Biden is Medicare for all and reparations, which she don't even have that right, because reparation activists had to tell her that her dollar amount's incorrect. And she tried to shout him down. So what's the big this is a mess. Because she don't know. She really does not know.
Well,
this is just like your Julian Assange before. You're just as bad on this as you were on Julian Assange before. This is bad.
On Julian Assange before, I said I didn't know. I said I didn't know. And for years, I've been supporting Julian Assange. For years, I have been saying that I have.
But I think the point is, Marianne, though, what Jimmy's referring to at that point in time, you were running for office. And so to say that you didn't know, shouldn't that have been something you should have educated yourself about if you're running to be president? Let me scroll back a little bit. Did we get to the part where he looked down at the phone? That part was kind of funny.
I mean, this is really disappointing.
It is. It is disappointing. I don't know how people can watch this interview and be like, this woman is serious. Yes, baby Ethernet. That's what she said to Marcel. She said, Marianne was like, you don't know. I was like, the fuck? I was like, this is bad.
Well,
this is just like your Julian Assange before. You're just as bad on this as you were on Julian Assange before. This is bad.
On Julian Assange before, I said I didn't know. I said I didn't know. And for years, I've been supporting Julian Assange. For years, I have been saying that I have gone to marches and I've visited with the.
Look, this is the part that's funny. So Jimmy picked up his phone. Checked out. Jimmy said, I am done. When are we going to end this and wrap it up? You guys remember that Dave Chappelle skit where they had the little box that says, how about you just wrap it up? Wrap it up. Oh my God.
I didn't know. I said I didn't know. And for years, I've been supporting Julian Assange. For years, I have been saying that I have gone to marches and I've visited with Stella and I've walked around the Parliament building in London. I've definitely been in support of Julian Assange and for years.
Okay, well, good. Well, good. People know now. So now people know you're staunch supporter of the Ukraine war effort. So,
you know, it's funny when you say, well, you would say it's strong supporter of Ukraine war. That's your language. It is not mine. I am strong.
You a weak supporter?
I can't, man. I can't. When I watched this earlier, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to keep it together when I go through this tonight, because this is just she's a weak supporter of the war.
May I finish my sentence?
Sure.
I'm a strong supporter in the path to a negotiated settlement in which there is a Ukraine to negotiate. And what is happening right now, to me, is in a way a vindication of that view, because now real negotiations are beginning. And real negotiations are beginning because both Russia as well as Ukraine know it's not going to be so easy to get everything you want here.
They tried to negotiate in the beginning. What are you Why is she talking like this is the first time negotiations are even being discussed? And Jimmy told you earlier on that they had that opportunity back then to do that.
And I'm glad that Vladimir Putin is beginning to have countries like China now for the first time willing to attend a meeting like that, because he will be getting China, India, Brazil, and other countries, not just the United States, who are saying this thing has got to stop and you're not going to get everything you want.
So it's that kind of attitude that is getting people slaughtered in Ukraine.
Bingo. Look at the look on her face. It's true. People are dying. Like, we can't sit here and pretend like that doesn't happen. There are casualties of war. We're not just talking about the soldiers, but people are dying. So the longer this continues, more people die. Ooh, honey.
And it's that kind of naive, that's that kind of attitude, that kind of view of the Ukraine, the NATO and the United States are using the people of Ukraine as cannon fodder to try to inflict economic damage on Russia. Yeah, and right. So this isn't about liberating from Russia. This is about us provoking.
They were already a country. There was nothing. We're not talking about the Donbass.
But she's totally ignoring the economic issues. I'm going to show you the chart after this clip. I'm going to show you what this is really about. Because the thing is, too, is like, how can she just totally dismiss the fact, especially since it was revealed in those Pentagon leaked documents, that This was all about trying to implement some other type of regime change to overthrow Vladimir Putin. Like, let's be real. Economically, how is Russia doing? Including the fact that they had the sanctions. Even with the sanctions, how is Russia doing economically right now? I'm going to show you. Let's continue. This is a hot mess. Oh, man.
Inflict economic damage on Russia. And
right,
so this isn't about liberating from Russia. This is about us provoking.
They were already a country. There was nothing. We're not talking about the Donbass and Crimea.
So you can have this view if you want. It's odious.
It's interesting. So you think that the people of Ukraine and the way they've been fighting in this war are just doing that, just as puppets of the U.S. government?
Yes. Oh, man. They're killing me tonight. Killing me. Come on, man. Come on.
That kind of fighting, that kind of spirit, that kind of unbelievable fighting is only because of the puppets of the U.S. government?
Yes, we are. So if you don't know what's happening there, that's fine. But to say that we're not slaughtering those people for an economic war by the West on Russia just shows a naivete about the situation. And it's too bad. It's too bad. So you sound just like, you sound like MSNBC and CNN on this. And it's too bad because that's garbage.
Yeah, that you talk to someone who doesn't agree with you, like by definition, and we're stupid. But that's okay. Is there another subject?
Okay, do it.
And then you see what happened there at the end. She's like, is there another subject that we can switch to? Let's get away from this one because I might reveal more of myself. Let's get away from this particular subject and go to something else. This interview did not go well for Marianne. And I'm very, very shocked that she went on to Jimmy Dore's show. And it seems like to me, she was not prepared to have this discussion. You on Jimmy's show, obviously, he's probably going to talk to you about one or two things. He's going to talk to you about the war state, and he's going to talk to you about the pandemic. And I felt like on both, you'll have to go back and watch the other clip about the pandemic. I felt like on both of them, she just was really not prepared for this. I don't know what she was expecting to come forward. Like she just wanted to be on camera and smile like at his audience or whatever, but she did not make herself look good in this video. I mean, Jimmy asked her questions that you guys can answer some of these questions. You guys can answer some of these questions that Marianne stumbled on.
That's fine. That's fantastic. Come see our live shows. We're going to be in Chicago, Rosemont, Las Vegas, Salt Lake City.
And then it ends like that. It's kind of funny. Come see our live shows. Like, yeah, I want to show you how Russia's doing right now economically. We're going by GDP. GDP and PPP. Let me go ahead and put it up. Put it up. Put it up. Okay. International Comparison Program. GDP, PPP. Let's scroll down. All countries and economies. Most recent value by the millions. Okay. It's in alpha order, so let's scroll down. So far, Argentina, 2022. Watch this. I want to show you something. Just go back and check. I mean, you guys probably already know the answer, but I just want to show you. There's Germany for 2022. Alphabetical order is a bitch. Sorry. I'm bad tonight. This is just bad. I'm sorry. It's a Friday and I'm all over the place. You see that? Russian Federation. Economically right now, even though there are the sanctions, and then we can go a little bit further, but I think you guys get the point. But economically right now, and if we're looking at 2022, so that ends with 2022, and the conflict started earlier last year. So at the end of 2022 was 5.33 trillion for Russia. By the way, that includes the sanctions. So even with the sanctions, economically, Russia seems to be doing all right. And that is something that the U.S. government does not want to continue. You got to think about some of the things. They don't have some of the same issues that we have in this country. When I interviewed Tara Reid, when we talk about the food industry, they don't have a company like Monsanto poisoning their food. The food that people eat over there it's clean. And because of that, they don't have some of the same health issues that people have in this country. Boy, I tell you, that was not a good look for Marianne. Let me go to some of the comments here. But yeah, if you have not had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. That helps me out with the algo. Thank you very much. And I think I'm going to do Utah on Sunday because that one's a really short one anyway. I'll do it on Sunday because of the time. Going to the chats. Thank you for the super chat, Miss. Dr. Shiva was right. Oh, Dr. Shiva will be here. I forgot to tell you guys. I did book him. I found out today. So he will be here at the end of August. So FYI. My comrade JB says, even Kyle Kulinski even talked about how Marianne Williamson was against Medicare for All in the 2020 primary. Yes, she was. Again, that wasn't that long ago. Yep. Tia says she knows being a Democrat means that she doesn't have to enroll or subscribe to those icky details. There you go. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Couldn't let today go by without saying hip hop celebrating 50 years today, despite we are already doing hip hop before Kool Herc came and took credit for creating it. Thanks, Roger. That's good to know. Thank you for the super chat, Cool Blue. RFK Jr. and Marianne, when they wax nostalgic, they are showing us they are romantics. Long live the past. It was so good to everyone. All right. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Gassan. Thank you so much. Thank you, Roger. Has Marianne Williamson ever talked about working class issues? I guess Medicare for all. Thank you for the super chat, Queen. MJ saying they don't really care about us. He sure did. I actually like that song. Thank you, Sir Bikes a lot today. That's an interesting name. Trump rotted her brain. No, she won't launch nuclear weapons. What's up with RFK and Williamson still getting their news from corporate media? I don't know, man. They know about independent media. They've been on independent media. Thank you again, Miss. They tied the Ukraine money to a domestic bill for Hawaii. Ding, 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 ding. Thank you. None of your business. Is in it for the campaign money she gets. Thank you, Charlie. Marianne's the perfect new face of the Democratic Party. A bad joke. Man, this is interesting. Thank you, Rift Seif. I honestly don't know what a Ukraine is. Is it like a U-boat? Oh. I think you're being sarcastic there, maybe? And thank you again, none of your business. Jimmy is tough. He is a good journalist. Yeah, Jimmy did a really good job. Like, she was not prepared. Let's go ahead and look at that poll and see how you guys voted in reference to this Justice Democrats question. There were 965 votes. Oh, 67, 65. Did someone vote and unvote? Oh, 69. Do you regret supporting Justice Democrats? 38% said yes. 8% said no. Woo, this is interesting. 52% said you didn't support them. Wow. This goes to show that I don't know if like my audience is changing per se, but I'm starting to notice that when I first started this show, based on like the audience I had then versus now I'm starting to see there's more people that are part of this audience that did not actually support Justice Democrats. So that's interesting. That means I'm reaching different people. Hey, I wasn't finished. What happened? I was okay, sorry. 52% of you said that you did not support them and 2% said not sure. That is interesting. Thanks, guys. All right, guys, it's Friday. Cheers to the freaking weekend. I'm out of here. I'll pick up Utah ballot initiative and measure on Sunday along with Vermont as well, because those are really short, but I'm past my time. Also, next week, I believe Tuesday night, I have to double check. I think Matt Tybee is going to be back here Tuesday night. The following week, Cornel West will be back and Dr. Shiva will be here last week of August. So have a good weekend, guys. Rolling with the homies. You remember that from Clueless? Rolling with the homies. I can't see the whole thing, Eric. Oh, thank you for the tip, Sam Wan. Thank you so much. The question marks. Yeah. Rolling with the homies. All right, guys, I'm out. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.